Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Bold Predictions heading into 2024 for the Georgia Bulldogs. Dill, these are your bold predictions. I honestly like a few of them, have a few bones to pick with a few of them as well. Now, more importantly, we all get the opportunity to call our shot. These are some of my favorite episodes we do during the offseason because we obviously believe in certain players heading into 2024. I am sure many of the Georgia fans who are listening feel a certain way about some players as well. I would love to hear some bold predictions from the Georgia fans in the comment section as well. Call your shot heading into 2024. And if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. The support from the Georgia fans, whether we're talking 2024, talking the recruiting trail, it's been absolutely amazing. We appreciate you guys. And Dill, without further ado, let's start with your first bold prediction. Dominic Loveit going over 1,000 yards, a guy that I certainly believe in. And quite frankly, I believe in this bold prediction as well. Sell the people on Dominic Loveit heading into 2024.
And you had to dust off the history books a little bit to find the last Georgia wide receiver to go for over 1,000. That was all the way back in 2002 with Terrence Edwards. I think you look at how well Dominic Loveit fits Carson Beck's game.
Yeah.
That's kind of what obviously stands out. And last year, obviously, a lot of targets getting eaten up by Browers, Ladd McConkey, and they were kind of doing some of those similar routes, working the middle of the field really effectively. I think his opportunity to kind of own that area allows some of those transfers and some of those more explosive young guys to kind of take the top off and open some space up for him. I think that's how he really has a good year and thrives in this.
Which a wild stat, by the way. When you texted me that this morning, I was stunned. I mean, you look at the talented pass catchers that have come through Athens, even over the last couple of years, right? George Pickens, Brock Bowers. I believe in this for the exact same reason you kind of said. Dominic Loveit fits exactly how Carson Beck wants to get his football to his wide receivers. And you go back to last year, Dominic Loveit played really good football for Georgia. A lot of his similar route tree concepts where he excels the most. That's also where Brock Bowers excelled. That's also where Ladd McConkey excelled. So didn't really have the opportunity to be the featured wide receiver. I think in 2024 is going to be Carson Beck's best friend. I think he's going to lead this team in targets. Now, the only reason that he doesn't go for 1,000 yards is, one, you have a lot of talented pass catchers, including the tight ends in this room. And I think we're going to talk about this with your second bold prediction. This Georgia rushing attack is also going to be really good. So I'm a believer in Dominic Loveit. Does he get to 1,000 yards? I think has a lot more to do with how this Georgia offense decides to operate in the 2024 year. Dill, going to number two bold prediction, which 6.2 rushing yards per attempt, which would be the highest in the last 10 years for this Georgia program. I love this one too. And I guess I'll let you start since it's your bold prediction. Tell us why you're a believer in this one right here.
And I think you kind of look, Georgia's always kind of near the top. I think they kind of hover in that 5.5, 5.8. And then you obviously see some teams average a little over that 6.2, but those are coming out of the MAC where if you have a really good wide or running back, let's say, you can obviously do some damage. In the SEC, really, really hard to hit this type of number. But I think you look, Georgia probably should have done it last year, but I think they lacked some of that explosiveness. I mean, when Milton was on the field, he did give them a bit of that for sure. But aside from him, I think you were kind of looking like, who's our guy who's going to rattle off some big plays? I think you kind of look at Trevor Etienne and what he was able to do at Florida in a far inferior situation, offensive line far weaker, his ability to rattle off big plays, hit those 50-plus yarders at times, and really be consistent hitting like that 30 kind of range. I think that's kind of what gets this team over the hump and puts a really, really high yards per attempt.
It's the chunk plays. If this one comes to fruition, it's the chunk plays that Trevor Etienne was so good at with the Florida Gators, where if you got him to the second level clean, you set him up in some one-on-one situations with backers and safeties. He was so good at making people miss. I think the problem with that Florida Gators offense in 2023 was they just struggled to get him to the second level clean because that Florida Gators offensive line was a liability in the 2023 year. I can get with this as well at not a knock at Kendall Milton, Dejon Edwards. Trevor Etienne's, at least in my opinion, again, not a knock at Milton, not a knock at Dejon Edwards. I think he's a massive upgrade at the running back position just from a pure ball carrier standpoint. And I mean, 4 yards after contact per carry for Trevor Etienne last year with the Florida Gators. Georgia's going to be able to keep him more clean, get him to the second level more often. That's when Trevor Etienne really does excel with those short area quicks, how he can bounce off tackles and have that contact balance. I do think you see one of the more prolific rushing attacks that we'll see in the SEC. Going to the defensive side of the football, this is one I have a little bit of a bone to pick, but I'll let you sell us on it first. Damon Wilson leading this team in sacks in the 2024 year. Sell the people.
Damon Wilson, if he kind of gets his weight up to more of that SEC playing weight, which frankly I'm guessing is what was keeping him off the field last year, if you look, he has a much more explosive first step than I think. Again, it's probably him or Jalen Walker. Take your pick who's going to be that guy. But I was watching last year as a younger player and not even a totally physically developed player in the way that you see some of these Georgia kids come in. I think he's so dynamic as a pass rusher. And that was, again, we talk about what Georgia was missing last year. And they're obviously, when they're losing or not winning national championships, it's by thin margins at this point in the Kirby Smart era. They didn't have that guy on the edge who was just ripping it up. I look at those moments. I think he has good pass rushing instincts where he sets guys up effectively, can use his hands well. But that motor he has off the or that explosiveness off the line and that ability to be flexible, really work the edge hard, I think is very unique for this team. It's going to be him or Jalen Walker, in my opinion. I think those two are really, really good pass rushers. I think we're going to see more of them. But I think Damon Wilson's a different level.
So I'm with Damon Wilson in terms of being a force in the pass rush department. You even kind of go back to his numbers last year at 29% pass rush win rate. Now, he only rushed the passer 50 times, but that small sample size, this kid's a Ferrari coming off the edge. There's just not many offensive tackles that can deal with the get off and the juice that Damon Wilson brings to the table. I'm obviously a massive Jalen Walker fan. I think a lot of the Georgia fans who've been listening know that Jalen Walker's kind of my guy that breaks out for Georgia in 2024. I think the key for Kirby Smart in this Georgia defense is how can you put these kids in positions to routinely get after the passer, right? You look at Chaz Chambliss, you look at Mikael Williams. Mikael Williams is also a guy that certainly could lead this team in sacks. I think he's a little bit underrated in terms of heading into the 2024 season, at least from my point of view. You're going to use those guys to stop the run. But can you get Damon Wilson, can you get Jalen Walker on the field in those third and long situations and just say, hey, pin your ears back, get after the quarterback, because that's where they operate the best. I think you have question marks about Damon Wilson and Jalen Walker playing the run on first and second down. That's okay. That's why you have guys like Mikael Williams and Chaz Chambliss. What I'm looking for Georgia is when you win on first and second down, which we know they will be with this front seven that they have, can you scheme up Damon Wilson? Can you get Jalen Walker in those situations to really get after the passer? That's what I'm looking for in the 2024 year. Dill, going to the number 4 bold prediction, let's talk about Malachi Starks winning the Chuck Bednarik Award for the best defensive player in college football. I'm certainly can get on with this one. Sell us on Malachi Starks.
Yeah, certainly not the best way to pronounce Chuck Bednarik, but we'll give you that. It's okay. Honestly, Malachi Starks, I think if you watch, is about as complete of a safety as I think you'll find. And I mean, his ability to take the ball away, play that rangy free safety role, the ability to come up, make plays in the box and hit and be physical, and then that ability to play man coverage when Georgia needs it. Again, his complete nature, or the complete nature with which he plays football is unbelievable. And frankly, I think his numbers get better if this pass rush gets better and gets after guys more. So again, I think you can see he's had a couple picks each year. It seems like I think he can go for that like 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of pick number. And if he gets that and does everything else he does, I think you'll see him very much featured as the best defensive player.
The thing is, whether he wins this award or not, he's one of the best players in all of college football. Like on either side of the football, you have guys like Mason Graham and Will Johnson. They're going to be elite football players as well. You start diving into a little bit more of the nitty gritty in terms of Malachi Starks. Still a 4% missed tackle rate in 2023 for a safety that's forced to make his tackles in spaces, a ludicrous number. Then you take a look at what he can do in man coverage. Having safeties that can operate in man coverage, it's massive for a defense. It lets you get really creative in terms of how you want to play and how you want to bring pressure. Targeted almost 40 times, only gave up a 51% completion percentage when targeted. He does everything the right way. Regardless if he goes for 6 interceptions, his value to the Georgia defense is just so freaking high heading into 2024. Now, I got my own bold prediction. I deleted one of yours, threw in my own bold prediction. we're going to go back to the offensive line, and kind of has what you said, or has to do with what you said in terms of Trevor Etienne. All 5 Georgia Bulldog offensive linemen making an SEC team. I feel really good about Tate Ratledge. I feel really good about Dylan Fairchild. I feel really good about Ernest Green. Now, you look at Xavier Truss, we feel pretty good about it, right? He's, especially with what Georgia wants to do in terms of road grade, move people off the line of scrimmage, not many better than Xavier Truss. You look at Jared Wilson at the center spot, I think within the Georgia building, there's a lot of confidence that he can come in and replace Cedric Van Pran. You could almost say 6 Georgia offensive linemen, because Micah Morris is going to play. Micah Morris is an all-SEC caliber offensive lineman as well. What makes this Georgia offensive line, at least in my mind, special in 2024, you might not have that top 10 NFL draft pick like Amarius Mims. There's not a hole in this Georgia offensive line, and not a lot of programs can say that. And you pull almost every single program, they got question marks about certain positions on the line of scrimmage. You look at Georgia, they probably would feel comfortable starting almost 10 offensive linemen on this Georgia roster. It makes this the best offensive line in the country.
Honestly, probably the only question is a little bit at the tackle depth spot. I think you kind of look, even Xavier Truss probably features more as a guard in the pros. I mean, again, he's obviously a really good tackle, probably doesn't have the high ceiling to be what I think Ernest Green can be in terms of how athletic Ernest Green is and how well he moves at that size. But you're kind of set. I mean, Xavier Truss's floor is about as high as you can see, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you are if you can run guys off the line of scrimmage the way he does. And again, you have Georgia that ability to, I think run the ball the way they're going to run it, I think is going to make it hard to rush the passer the same way people would expect of maybe a team that, again, you kind of look, I like Monroe Freeling for sure. I think he's kind of that backup swing tackle they have. But I do think at the end of the day, this offensive line's floor is ungodly high, because you just know you got 5 guys who can move bodies.
Well, that's how Georgia has set up this roster. Like, if you are a starting offensive lineman for Georgia, you're going to have to earn it. Because, again, you go back to a guy like Micah Morris. I don't know if there's a program across the country Micah Morris doesn't start on besides this Georgia program. And so if you are a starting 5 offensive lineman for Georgia, that means you are a top-end player. That means you're one of the better offensive linemen in the country. I kind of believe in this one. It's sneaky, and maybe we'll have to count all honorable mentions in kind of this category. Believer in this Georgia offensive line. That'll do it for the boys' bold predictions. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Would love to hear some bold predictions from y'all in the comment section. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Peace.